few days ago, I met with students and recent graduates of Westinghouse College Prep as part of the Northwestern Scholars Program to discuss transitioning into college. As the conversation shifted from navigating TAs and sleep schedules to stereotype threat and racism, a silence filled the room, heavy on the ears and almost visible on the faces of the high school students, overwhelmed with what was coming. I really wanted to break that silence, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Silence takes on many meanings. I would assume some of us long for the days where silence was merely golden, a mark of reflection. Others may see silence as the sign of anxiety, of a painful inability to share your truth. But today, as we reflect on Dr. King and his truth about silence and memory, I want to highlight my truth. Silence is failure. Silence has a failing in all of us. Being a graduate student in medical school, no less, I experienced failures, and it was almost always due to silence. But it is those failures that have taught me a few truths I'd like to share with you all. First, about power. It's easy to forget we have it. We may feel tied to social norms or to our own modesty, but the truth of our own agency is undeniable. I learned this on the wards. I struggled to speak during rounds, partially because of the tremendous mental effort it took to maintain consciousness after 4 straight hours, but also because I felt I couldn't contribute to the care of the patients. But eventually, I learned that my contributions were often the highlight of my patient's day, even when it was as simple as a conversation during lunch. I gradually broke silence more as I came to realize my own power. My second truth is self-advocacy. Let me let you all in on the big secret of graduate education. It's extremely hard. Any level of success requires being your own advocate, your own champion, your own best friend, if you will. Yet, early on, I neglected to self-advocate because I surmised that personal and academic failings, often highlighted by those not invested in my success, disqualified me from that success. Now I realize that overt attention to personal failings is as natural to higher education as is debt. The unnatural part is focusing on the words of enemies to our progress, to the extent that we forget to be our own best friends. And in the end, as Dr. King himself put it, we'll remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. My last truth is on privilege. Privilege has a polarizing connotation these days, referring to a fallacy of superiority and overt dismissal. I refer instead to its denotation of a precious opportunity. It took a while, but I finally realized that I, as an immigrant, as a person of color, and as an advocate of diversity, have this tremendous privilege of eventually becoming a doctor. That of using what I learned to help others achieve goals of health regardless of creed or race or orientation. And my privilege is not unique. We all have this tremendous opportunity to make things happen for our community, our world. In the political and social climate we live in, we all need to recognize the privilege of our positions, whether it's in the clinic, the courtroom, or the classroom. And with that privilege comes the imperative that we speak up, that we question things we're told to accept, and we refuse to stay silent. A prime example of all these truths in action was early on in my 3rd year rotations. I was working with a family medicine doctor in a busy clinic. Our patient was a middle-aged woman who had been an active smoker for decades. My attending mentioned that it was likely impossible to get her to stop smoking. She'd been trying for years. Internally, though, I recognized my ability to talk about it. With some trepidation, I told my attending I would still try, that it would be a shame not to mention the importance of quitting smoking again. Lo and behold, after I finished talking to the patient and rushed off to the next, the patient pulled my attending to the side and mentioned that she wanted some more information about quitting, that I had gotten her to think about in a way she hadn't before. That's the strength of recognizing your power of self-advocacy and of privilege. I think Dr. King knew that strength. I think that's what he meant when he gave that famous quote about silence and memory. Personally, I like to think he also wanted to be remembered as someone who wasn't silent. Otherwise, his silence would sit heavy on the eyes of high schoolers, overwhelmed with what was coming. And this brings me back to those taciturn Westinghouse students. In view of their reticence in the face of their future, I considered a new meaning to silence, a call to action, to learning from failures, a reminder of the truths I found, and I ultimately told them this. There's no one right way to be successful, but I can tell you with certainty that the wrong way is to never speak up.